All right, so just a brief introduction as to kind of who the three of us are that are orchestrating the event. My name is Bailey Worth. I'm class of 2018. I got my bachelor's degree in history and psychology, and now I work at Sweetbriar College as a career services associate in our career services office. And my phone number and my contact information is there if you have any questions after the fact. I'm more than willing to answer any questions that come to you in a moment of panic or in the middle of the night. Just reach out, and I'll let the other two introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, I am Emily Dodson. I am a class of 18 with Bailey as well. I was a major in business and a minor in environmental studies. I have just started in the Alumni Relations and Development Office, and my contact information is below. And so if you have any questions about how great our alumni are or anything about that network, I'm happy to answer them.
And I'm Jessie Pugh. I am a senior admissions counselor here at Sweetbriar. I am not an alumna, but I did attend another small private college in Virginia, so I know all the wonderful benefits of attending a small school. Tonight, I'm also going to be managing the chat, so if you have any questions for our panelists, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll make sure those questions get asked so you get your answers while you're online with us tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. So we can go to the next slide. I wanted to share a little bit about our Career Services Center, and we have the director of our office, Barb Watts, also on the call, and we'll give her a chance just to kind of pop in if her internet is cooperating to introduce herself. But we really wanted to just communicate that our Career Services Center is very hands-on. We're very involved in the lives of our students, and we had over 700 contact points during the fall semester alone with over 200 one-on-one appointments. So as far as career services goes, that is a really huge commitment, and not a lot of colleges can say that they've met with their students on a one-on-one basis. And I'll let Barb kind of elaborate a little bit on that too if her internet is working. I see she's unmuted.
Hi everyone. Greetings from Monroe, Virginia, just outside of Sweetbriar. It's a delight to be here tonight, and I think the fact that Bailey, Emily, and Jessie are facilitating this program is a huge testimony to what young professionals are doing in the workforce today. Particularly Bailey and Emily's addition to our campus has been magnificent. It's been great to see what a Sweetbriar woman can come back and do in service to their community. We have a very holistic approach to career services. We're working with students from when they first arrive on their college campus, maybe they're uncertain about what major they might want to explore, all the way to when they graduate and beyond. We actually provide career services to our alums for life. And I've actually been working with some alums this week who are thinking about job changing. So no, we're here to help, and just reach out and let us know how we can be a resource. I'll turn it back to Bailey at this point. Thanks.
Oh, you're muted, Bailey, hang on.
Okay, so that was really funny. Every time I tried to unmute myself, Jessie muted me. So that was a really fun. Okay, so on the next slide, we'll kind of talk a little bit more about how exactly this is going to work. So we've already gotten through the introduction, and we've got some questions for our panelists that we've kind of created thinking back to that time when we were in college or before we chose a college, what we wished we had known, and kind of the questions that we didn't ask at the time that we wish we did. And then we'll open it up to the audience. So if you have a question that you really want to make sure is answered by one of our panelists, you can open the chat function and you can send it as a message. And like Jessie said, she'll pass the question on and make sure that it's that it makes its way to the panelists so that your question can be answered while you're here with us today. So we do ask that you remain muted and use the chat function to get in touch with myself or Jessie or Emily, one of the moderators. That's primarily just to make sure that we don't have a whole lot of talk over, and to kind of help with people who might have low bandwidth or who are calling in. So please do keep yourselves muted, and you can interact through the chat. So now we can go ahead and get started. So we have some lovely panelists here today. So I'm going to kind of go through these in the order on the screen and allow them to introduce themselves and share a little bit about who they are, what they do, a very brief introduction, and then we can get into the meaty questions. So we'll start with Brittany Griffith.
Hi guys, I'm Brittany Griffith. I am currently in Lynchburg, Virginia, so right down the road from Sweetbriar, and I am the Director of Programming and Sales at the Academy Center of the Arts, which is our local performing arts center.
Awesome, thank you. Megan Johnston, unfortunately, is feeling under the weather today, so she has asked that we share her email with anybody who is interested. So if you are interested, please pop your name in the chat. If you're kind of looking at environmental studies, French, any kind of nutrition programming, if she seems like a really cool person and you want to get to know her and ask her some questions, just let us know and we'll get her email out to you. And so we'll go on to Emily Hawk.
There we go. Hi, I'm Emily Hawk. As you can see, I was a liberal studies major, which basically means I majored in education. And then I went on to do our Masters of Arts and Teaching program. So I stayed on at Sweetbriar to get my master's. And this is my first year full-time teaching as a kindergarten teacher in Amherst County Schools, which is actually the county that Sweetbriar is located in. So it's what feeds out into Sweetbriar, and it's what surrounds it.
All right, so we'll go on now to Hannah Kovetz.
Hey everybody, I'm Hannah Kovetz. I was a member of the class of 2015, and now my hometown is Danville, Virginia. Now I am living in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm a legislative aide for a member of the Virginia General Assembly, and her name is Senator Siobhan Dunavant.
All right, thank you. And now on to Jessie Schuester.
Hi, I'm Jessie Schuester, class of 2017. I was a history and music double major. Now I go to University of Florida Law School. I'm a transfer. Last year I was at Albany Law School. And just kind of a little plug for Sweetbriar, when I was wanting to transfer, I called up an old roommate who actually goes to University of Florida Lebanon College of Law. And I was like, hey, how do you like it? And that was one of the reasons I decided to transfer.
All right, and Lydia Fleck.
Hey guys, I'm Lydia, and I'm originally from Pocosin, Virginia, but I am now in Newport News. I majored in engineering science and I'm minored in mathematics. Now I actually am working for the company that I got my internship through while I was at Sweetbriar, which is Huntington Ingalls Industries, Newport News Shipbuilding. And we are the sole designer, refueler, and manufacturer of nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, and we also do nuclear-powered submarines for the Navy.
All right, so we will go ahead and get started on the questions. So we'll start out with just generally, tell us how you found Sweetbriar College.
All right, so I guess I'll go ahead and answer. I actually was looking at a whole bunch of different colleges, none of which were women's colleges. And then I went to McAdoo's in Lynchburg, and the waitress was like, oh, you're college shopping? Like, you should definitely go check out Sweetbriar. And I was like, no, I don't really know. Like, all women's school, not for me. And then I drove onto campus, and that sold me right there without having to meet anybody, not a single soul. The campus really sold me with its beauty and just all its land and the deer crossing sign when you first drive in. And then the more people I met and the longer that I looked at Sweetbriar, the more I knew it was for me. And so it was kind of, I made it on campus and knew that it was the place for me. And then it kind of showed me what I wanted to do, which was really nice because I didn't really have a clue before then.
All right, and I think Lydia was the other person who had a great answer to this question.
Yeah, I was kind of had the same experience as Emily. When I first found it, actually, my physics teacher in high school like ran up to me in between classes and gave me a brochure for their engineering program. He knew I was interested in engineering, and what better to send a woman that's interested in engineering to a women's college that's one of 2 women's colleges with ABET accredited engineering program. And so Explore Engineering, they have these weekend ones and they have a week-long one. And I went to a weekend one, and when I went to the weekend one, my boyfriend had just broken up with me. So obviously I was not interested in a women's college, but as soon as I drove on campus, you can't help but fall in love with the beauty of the school, and then staying overnight and getting to meet the professors, getting to meet actual students, and I got to meet the swim coach because I was interested in swimming as well. That kind of just made me all start thinking, maybe this isn't that bad. Maybe I can actually go here, but I wasn't quite sold on it. And I actually ended up coming back in the summer for the week-long Explore Engineering camp, and that's when I was finally sold. I was like, you know what, this is for me. There's no other option. Like, I can swim here, I can do engineering here, I can do everything I want here. So Sweetbriar it is for me.
Awesome, and I think Jessie has our last answer for this question.
I'm kind of the anomaly, I guess, in that I was looking for a women's college. I'd gone to a public high school, and at the time I was all set to go to Indiana University of Pennsylvania, which is a state school that my mom went to, but my mom was really pushing me towards a women's college in Philadelphia. And I went, and I was not sold on their college, but they brought up the idea of a women's college, and that just sounded kind of cool to me. And I started looking at various women's colleges, and then I found Sweetbriar. And I mean, just like everyone says, the minute you drive on campus, nowhere else mattered after that. And I visited a lot of schools. So, and I also want to stress that the overnights are just really make or break. And I'd done a couple overnights at other schools before that, and just the difference was staggering, from the students to the bells and everything in between that just makes Sweetbriar special.
Awesome, thank you. So we'll move on to our next question. And that is, tell us about your path from deciding your majors and your minors. So we'll start out with Hannah Kovetz.
Yeah, mute myself and do this correctly. So I had always had, I majored in government and international affairs, which at the time when I was there, you did those programs in conjunction, and then whatever your final thesis was on is what eventually was listed on your diploma, if any of us can read our diplomas, because they're all in Latin. So my diploma says government, but at the time I was majoring in government and international affairs. And it was a pretty boring path to get there. I was kind of one of those who knew what I was going to do when I came into college. I'd always had an interest in law and an interest in policy. I had been involved in my community quite a bit in high school. I am from a rural area. Danville, Virginia is Southside Virginia. So it's kind of that mix where it is urban, but you're still in a very rural corner of the state. So I'd had kind of firsthand experience from the community, knew that I wanted to do something policy-oriented or law-oriented. So I chose that path when I got there. Majoring in government and international affairs allowed me to do some pre-law classes, also mixed with some policy. It was very theory-based, so it's a lot of kind of like why we are the way we are, not how we do what we do. So through that time, I obviously gained a lot of access to different internships and things in that nature. And then finally come my senior year, after not doing very well on the LSAT my first go around, I was like, policy is definitely where I want to be. I spent a summer working on Capitol Hill for a member of the House of Representatives, and I was like, no, policy all the way. So mine was pretty boring. I was kind of one of those people that knew what they wanted to do before I stepped foot on campus.
All right, and we'll move now to Jessie Schuester to answer the same question.
So I also kind of had an idea that I wanted to go to law school. Always had a desire to argue with everyone, I guess. And but how I got there was a little different in that I played saxophone really heavily growing up, and I was in like every musical ensemble in my high school. So when I got there, I guess it made sense to whoever assigned me, but I got assigned to Professor Jeff Jones, who was the head of our music department. And I sat down and I told him straight out, I am not going to be a music major, no matter what you say. I want to continue with my saxophone lessons, but that's it. You will not find me in the music department. I want to be a history major because I met Professor Lynn Laufenberg prior to that. And I just really wanted to take every class I could with her. And I eventually did, which led to my medieval and Renaissance studies minor with her. But he kind of convinced me, like, you know, why don't you just take a music class, get to know the music faculty. You clearly have a passion for music. Why, you know, abandon it now? So I was like, well, I suppose so. And I mean, after my first class, I was sold and I ended up double majoring for that reason. And I think that it really actually did help me then when I decided to apply for law school, because I had that kind of creative side to me, as well as that analytical side that I was able to talk to with schools about.
Awesome. And Emily Dodson is going to step in for Megan Johnston, and she's going to share her path to how she decided her majors and minors.
Yeah, thank you, Bailey. So it's funny to hear how people had a clear vision of what they wanted to do once they got to Sweetbriar and got to college. I thought I had a clear vision. As a first-year student, I thought I was going to follow my friend Emily's steps and be a kindergarten teacher, and I thought that's really what I was supposed to do with my life. But the best part about going to a small liberal arts school is that you have a lot of hands-on experience. Especially in those introductory classes, so you can actually understand what that will actually be like. So in my first education course, I had to spend 10 hours in the school, and I spent those hours over a course of the semester with 8-year-olds, I think, and I learned very quickly that that was not my passion or what I needed to do for every day for my life. And so, you know, I looked in different areas, and I've always been pretty business-minded, and so that's why I settled in the business department, and I just absolutely loved my professors, and they got to know me from one of my very first classes. And then for the environmental studies, which was my minor, that was what I like to call, you know, just like Jessie's talking about how music is kind of her creative side, environmental is kind of, you know, my side to get outdoors. And I always like to say that Sweetbriar's campus is your laboratory, especially with environmental studies. You know, with over 3,000 acres, you know, you can study different fresh waterways from creeks to lakes, and kind of seeing all those different ways that you can interact with the environment. And so it was a really fantastic experience to balance both business and environmental. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. And I do want to say I saw some people jumping in. I just want to say if you guys have any questions for our panelists, make sure you input those into the chat option. We are halfway through our first set of questions. So if you have a question for one of our panelists, now would be a great time to ask one. And we're going to move into talking about internship and research opportunities. And we'll start with Emily Hawk.
All right. So internships and research might not seem super relevant to education, but I quickly found that they are and are very different and important at Sweetbriar. So one of the really neat things about Sweetbriar is that because we have a Master's of Arts in Teaching program, we do our student teaching portion of the education major in that year. So instead of your senior year, your last semester being pushed into classrooms, and normally you're in one classroom for 4 to 6 weeks, and then you flip up and go to another classroom in a different grade for 4 to 6 weeks, we spend the entire year during the MAT year in one classroom with one teacher and one set of kids. And that made all the difference for me. Not realizing it, but you get to see the span of an entire school year and not just the blips and pieces that you see when you do a 10-hour internship like Emily Dodson was talking about. So I really got to know the teacher, and I really got to know my students, and that made me a lot better teacher and a lot more reflective of my own practice, because I was able to see my own practice grow with the same kids instead of being kind of pushed in and out of different environments. And so that made me a better teacher for sure. And then because it's an MAT year, we also do research during that time. So not only was I student teaching, I was also doing an action research paper. So I was really analyzing myself and doing research on my own practice while I was doing that. So it really led for a whole picture view of what I was going into, and it gave me techniques and practices to reflect on my own practice during that time, which I think is really unique and special and something that I haven't heard of at any other college and any other education program. When I came in my first year, I felt adequately prepared, if not more adequately prepared than some of my other colleagues. We had 5 brand new teachers just at my school this year, and out of those teachers, I felt that I probably had the most preparation, just talking to them and seeing how they reacted to different situations as well.
Awesome, thank you. And we'll move on to Lydia to talk about her internship opportunities at Sweetbriar.
So engineering is very much of a research degree. And one of the opportunities I was able to have is, if you knew me in college, I was very passionate about swimming. And one of our classes in engineering that we were required to take was called material science. And you're basically learning about the chemistry, the makeup of all the different materials that we have and why they make up, or why they're made that way and why they're used for the different uses. Like we got to make concrete and stuff like that. But one of my honors projects was through the material science class, and I actually got to test the different materials and different patterns of a swimsuit in the pool. So I would take different kinds of swimsuits. We had like the regular swimsuit that we use for our practices, and we would have our knee skin that we use in championships, and we would have something similar to that, but not quite as fancy, and then something that is technically now illegal according to USA Swimming, and looked at how it actually affected your swims to see if, okay, all this technology is being put into the sport, is it really actually paying any kind of a difference? And I found out it actually was, and which kind of made me feel a little bit better that, you know, all this preparation and money I spent in my sport was actually paying off. But also what's interesting about the engineering program is that they require you to do an internship to graduate as part of their degree, and it counts as credits towards your degree. So I got to intern at where I work, Huntington Ingalls Newport News Shipyard, and I got to intern there 2 summers. The first summer was actually through a department where it was a much more of a structured kind of engineering environment, so I did a lot more stress analysis on different kinds of the boat to see if the components would indeed fail during a stress event. So like if a bomb blew up by the ship, would the phone still work or something like that? So I did that one for my first summer. And the second summer, I was actually more into the components. So I was more into the side of dealing with the vendor and dealing with the Navy and dealing with the actual ship itself and the components that power the ship. And that's actually what I ended up going into when I graduated, which was a lot of fun, but realized it's not really what I wanted to do. So I ended up moving to the waterfront, which is where I'm at now. And I think the internships and the research projects kind of help you decide whether or not what you're majoring in and what you're doing is really what you want to do for the rest of your life, because it gives you a little bit of a hands-on experience, a little bit of a taste of what to expect. So yeah.
All right, and Brittany.
Yeah, so I was a business major, and I had 3 pretty neat experiences with regard to internships and research. The first is during my time in a course called Nonprofit Management, we were required as a part of the course, as a part of our hours per week, to actually do an internship with a nonprofit in town. And so I was able to actually link up with a group called Kids Haven, which supports families and specifically kids who have lost a parent. And to me, that was really amazing because I had lost my dad when I was young. And so I went into this internship with this like really like personal connection without knowing any of the staff or without them knowing what I could help them with. And I was able to set up a new website for them and kind of assist them with survey creation, which was, in terms of the classes I was taking at the time, I was in market research, and a lot of that is learning about properly creating surveys and analyzing results and taking that data and doing something with it. And so I was able to assist them in that area, which to this day, they're still utilizing some of the things that I had done in their everyday practices in Lynchburg. The second internship that I did was actually with a group called Benchmark Systems, which is a healthcare electronic medical record company in Lynchburg, and I was assisting them with social media marketing. It actually ended up with regard to how long I kind of worked with them, I was with them for an entire semester, but that actually led to post-graduation, them hiring me out for contract work, which was really great because in the internship, I was able to create that connection. I was able to show them, what kind of work and what level of work a Sweetbriar grad can, or a Sweetbriar student can do for you, hard work, dedication, working smarter, not harder, being resilient, all of those things. And that led to me actually working for them as their outsourced marketing person moving forward, which was really, really cool. And then I also was able to take a class. It was an independent study with the dean of the business department at the time, Dr. Tom Scott. And I worked on, in the same vein as Benchmark Systems, I worked on marketing for two different medical companies. One was called Rubber Arm, which is kind of like a Bengay. And then one was called NanoTouch, which is a self-cleaning adhesive that you put on doors that is supposed to clean off the germs when you touch it. And that was a really neat independent study because I was able to help them with their needs as they were starting up, but it actually ended up leading me into the job that I took post-graduation, which was not with either company. It was actually with Dr. Scott, which was really neat. So there was a lot of opportunities in the business department to kind of find your own internship or quasi-internship or independent study and take something that you had interest in and really apply it into the community and the businesses around us, which was really a wonderful way to kind of start your network, earlier than when you have that diploma and you're walking out the door. It really led me to a lot of opportunities that I might not have had if I didn't engage in those otherwise. So.
All right. Thank you guys so much. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how Sweetbriar has helped you develop both personally and professionally. And we'll start with Hannah.
So now that I've heard everybody talk, I'm like, oh my God, everything that I thought that I was going to say has totally changed. So personally, it was kind of the hard one. Of course, when you enter your 4 years of college, whether you're a native Virginian or if you're coming, I had several friends who came across the country who are from Washington State or California who were coming there. You are expected, as with any college, that you were going to grow and mature and kind of find your way and maybe find a voice that you didn't know that you had. So personally, all of those things are kind of expected, but some other points that I was trying to think about today is you are constantly around some of the most motivated women. One, your professors are always going to keep you motivated. They are going to expect so much out of you. What you think is your best is never your best. And we constantly joke about that. I think at one point in time, it was like on a t-shirt in the bookstore. And that is certainly not a bad thing. It's probably one of the best things. Your professors are going to expect a lot out of you. In turn, your friends are going to expect a lot out of themselves, which in turn is going to make you expect a lot out of yourselves. So one, you're highly motivated. And then let me cite my notes, figure out what else I was going to say. Outward presentation. Even on the days when you are in sweatpants and a baggy t-shirt, you are still showing up in class and expected to perform at your highest capacity. There's not a day when you're in that small classroom setting, you can't just kind of come in and slack off. Your professors, again, are going to be expecting a lot out of you. And then always wanting to do something something more. Again, kind of back to that motivation thing, that your best, even personally, is not your best. You're always kind of achieving, trying to get to that next thing, trying to get a really great internship at the end of the semester that you can share with your friends, or things of that nature. And then professionally, I would say, of course, now I work in the political arena. I divide my time between kind of the more traditional politicking, campaigning, and then also my legislative and policy work. So something in that small class setting that we had the ability to do was constantly be having conversations. Again, doing government international affairs, it was a lot of reading, it was a lot of debating, it was a lot of discussing, and you were able to you were taught to agree to disagree agreeably, which is something that I still carried to this day. And then probably one of the best things, and Barbara, you probably remember this too, when Wayne Stark was around in career services, professionally, hands down, one of the best things that I was taught is in career services to be able to work in a professional setting with different generations of people. Kind of whenever you found your groove and your path of what you were going to be doing post-graduation. Mine, of course, I was able to lock down a job pretty far out from graduation, maybe about 2-3 months or so. Wayne immediately was like, you're going to be in a male-dominated field. You're going to be working with a lot of baby boomers, and this is how you're going to manage working with them. And it was not only working underneath somebody that was a different generation, but also getting to the point where you could manage somebody that was a generation below you. So when you went on to hire interns, it was kind of one of those where it was preparing you for the job that you're going to have 5 years out, rather than just kind of that first step when like you have to find your wings and kind of step out of the nest and like go have your first job. So yeah, that was a long-winded answer for how it prepared me personally and professionally.
Those were some great answers. So Brittany, I think you also, Brittany, you can go ahead with your answer.
Cool. Yeah, 100% to everything that Hannah just said. She couldn't have taken the words out of my mouth, better than she did. I will say that that in addition to agreeing with exactly what Hannah just said, that when I went into school, I was this shy, introverted person. And I was afraid to go out into social settings. I was afraid of, just not knowing who I was and not knowing how to take that person and put them in a new place. And everybody here can probably agree with me that when you walk into Sweetbriar, it immediately feels like a community of people that just support each other, whether or not they know who you are or your background or what your goals are or where you're from or, how much money your family makes. It really doesn't matter. And so coming from being this introverted person into that mindset, I felt really lifted up. And personally, I was able to grow pretty significantly. I ended up my senior year being in multiple clubs, doing multiple things in student government. I was DJing parties, it really was a complete 180 for me. And I 100% believe that that's because the Sweetbriar environment really allows you to grow in that way and supports you while you do it. I'll say professionally, one of the biggest things for me is that because I was able to take that introverted person and turn them into who I am today, that has allowed me to do the job that I do. I started at the Academy Center of the Arts in Lynchburg as a director of communications. And I can tell you that I used to be terrified to give a presentation in front of a class my freshman year. And now I'll stand in front of multiple cameras while we're opening up a historic theater for the first time in 50 years and give a speech and not care. And that was huge for me. The ability to take, to be able to walk into a room and like Hannah said, with multi-generations, sitting there and everybody has big opinions and you need to agree to disagree agreeably. Being able to do that personally was not something I could have imagined when I was 18 years old walking into Sweetbriar in 2010. And I really feel like the community allowed me to grow in that way and that I can kind of hold my own wherever I go, which is really, really amazing for me.
another really great answer. And I'm going to kind of jump in as well. Much like Brittany, I was very shy and reserved. When I came into college, I was very much somebody who said, I'm here for the education. I'm going to do research. Like, I'm not big. Like, I'm not going to go to parties. I'm not going to go to hang out with friends. Like, I'm just going to go do my education. I'm from Lynchburg, so I had kind of the idea that I would just go home on the weekends and hang out with my friends from high school. And then that really changed once I actually got to Sweetbriar. I started to really learn my own voice and find it and be able to use it appropriately, which really has helped me as a person be able to kind of really represent not only Sweetbriar, but represent who I am. Because prior to coming to Sweetbriar, I wasn't really that person that would go out and speak to an audience like we're doing tonight, or moderate a panel, or do anything like that. Like, that would have been unheard of for me in high school. Professionally, I think that it says a lot that I didn't start out in this role in career services immediately after graduation. I had about a year away from Sweetbriar, working in therapeutic day treatment, doing counseling work, and then starting to do career prep work at a technical school. And then coming back to Sweetbriar, I really understood exactly what Sweetbriar did for me, because moving from those positions, it took a lot of guts and it took a lot of self-reflection. And I think that without Sweetbriar, I wouldn't have taken my feelings into consideration in either of those positions, and I probably would have been really unhappy in them. And I think that it makes me a better professional, because every day I meet with students who are going through this process of learning who they are, figuring out how to use their voice, or really using their voice effectively, and becoming those strong Sweetbriar women that we raise and cultivate. I meet with them every day, and part of what we do is really help with that finding of their voice, and really support them through that journey. So you're never alone when you're at Sweetbriar, and I think that that's also a really huge kind of professional aspect of being able to reach out to somebody to ask for help. That's translated into my work in career services. I frequently will send Barb emails pretty much saying, am I doing this right? Like, how can I do this better? How can we support our students better? And really just always having that question of what more could I do to make an impact? So I think that that's kind of where Sweetbriar has helped me develop personally and professionally. So we'll move on to some other questions, and these are going to kind of be a free-for-all. So panelists, if you have an answer for it, go ahead and jump right in. Some of you spoke a little bit about faculty, and I really want to make sure that we're giving faculty all of the credit that they deserve. So let's try to talk a little bit about how faculty and staff specifically supported you on your career path and what that really looked like.
Okay, should I hop in on this one, or does somebody else want to? Jessie, do you want to go?
You can go.
Okay. I felt like I should, because I mentioned Wayne. Being required to spend as much time upstairs in career services is something that even now, as I'm working in higher ed policy arena, I was shocked to learn how many schools did not do this stuff, that they didn't take the time to polish your resume, or even show you how to do that. I still to this day am getting internship applications with some of the worst resumes I've ever seen. I'm like, oh my God, career services would have flipped out if they would have seen something like this. So taking, not only utilizing career services, but even your professors. I mean, my professor, who at the time there was a small group of them for government and international affairs. He was so disappointed in me when I decided not to go to law school. But as soon as I said, like, yes, I'm not going to law school, but I know exactly what I want to do now after having a really big summer internship that I was able to land, he was like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. This is who I'm putting you in contact with. You need to go spend a day with so-and-so. So it is amazing the connections that they have, especially career services is always able to get in touch with all of us. I still have girls reach out all the time where they're interning for me or helping get positions in other offices. So the connection is still there, and the faculty and staff are kind of the front lines, the people to get in contact with all these different connections.
Did anyone else have an answer to the question that they'd like to share?
Sure. So I mean, one of the biggest things for me when I was picking a school was getting to know the faculty, because I went to a really small high school and I was, always talking to my teachers about things. So I really love that open door policy that Sweetbriar has, and being able to go and talk to a professor, whether it's about, class or something in your personal life or career, choice. And I think that just went a long way, because when I was visiting other schools, I would sit in on a class and then I'd go try to talk to the professor afterwards and be like, oh no, like, I'm not available. And it was just like odd to me. So Sweetbriar professors always definitely took that, extra 10 minutes or so to sit down, or if you had something more to talk about, they'd schedule a time to come see you. And I kind of mentioned her earlier, but Professor Laufenberg in the history department, I mean, she'd have us to her house for dinner. And I mean, if there was ever something we needed, she would just drop things. And she even took us to DC once. And it was just really great to be able to have those connections. And then I did Virginia program in Oxford, which I know some other students have done, and that was one of the coolest experiences I've ever done through Sweetbriar. And I was able to go to Oxford and study, and one of the Sweetbriar professors was actually going with us. So it was really cool to get to know Professor Lilly through that, and then having that connection beyond just the summer I spent there.
All right, and we are going to give a 10-minute warning. We're going to have 10 minutes left in our panel, so if you have any questions, please make sure to get those in on our chat. We'd love to have those answered for you if you have any questions about Sweetbriar in general, careers in general. It doesn't necessarily have to be a career-related question. All of our panelists went to Sweetbriar, so they also have their own perspectives on general aspects of Sweetbriar. Oh, we just got a question. What was the most influential class that you took at Sweetbriar? As you can tell from all of the videos, everybody is like, man, that's a good question.
Does it need to be like in your major?
No, it doesn't have to be major related. It can be anything.
Okay. Now that I think about that, it probably was in my major. I had a, I can't remember what the actual name of it was. Of course, they all had kind of like quirky names, but it was like a theory of the presidency sort of class. At the time, I graduated in 2015, so this would have been like maybe 2014. We were getting ready to come up on a presidential election. So that class is actually what I ended up basing most of my thesis on. I took a lot of that, and then, spent the like year and a half that you do part of your junior year and then your entire senior year gearing up for your thesis and then producing it. It was like everything that, all of the books and everything that we read there were some of the biggest portions of my thesis. That was probably the most influential.
Yeah, I can hop in on this one too really quickly. I took a class that was called Writing for Music and Film, and it was a journalism class. And I was able to, in that course, learn how to communicate about the things that I really loved and I was passionate about. I really love music. I used to want to be a composer for movie scores and realized that I wasn't very good at it and switched to the business degree. But, you know, I was able to, in that class, kind of take this thing that I was really passionate about and learn how to communicate why I was passionate about and what I was hearing and seeing and what that meant in a very clear and precise way. And that was, as I look back, doing what I do now, or what I did as the director of communications, that was really helpful for me because it allowed me to take those skills and just literally pick them up and put them in my job over at the academy.
All right, so we have another question specifically for Jessie. What specifically did you gain from the Oxford program?
So the first thing that came to mind was living abroad. I mean, I'd only ever lived in America, and so being out of the country for so long was definitely a sense of independence that I hadn't felt before. But academically, I mean, they had some of the brightest minds in British literature and history that came, and it was just really interesting to sit in the British lecture style. So someone would come in and they would talk to us every morning, and we'd have different lecturers coming in and talking about different books or times in history. And then we would have a time on Fridays that we would meet specifically for history in small groups, about 3 students and 1 professor for literature in the morning, and then history in the afternoon. And I actually had the joy of working with the head of the program for history, and that was wonderful being able to have those discussions about like Jacobean and Elizabethan history that you don't really necessarily get anywhere else than Oxford. The food was good as well.
All of the important questions are getting answered here. So we have another question specifically for Hannah. What would you say to someone that wants to go into government work regarding going to law school or not?
So that's a tough one. And I even had an intern this past year who used to work with me in an assistant role and then came back to intern, and she's in her 3rd year of law school here at the University of Richmond. And even talking with her, I felt like I had the best perspective. People have totally different opinions on this. Virginia's strange. It is very much kind of a who you have worked for, who kind of what reputation you've gained via who you have worked for. So even talking with Mallory this year as my intern, who's in her 3rd year of law school, we kind of gotten back and forth conversations of me saying, God, listening to you talk makes me wish I would have gone to law school, even though my opportunity is 5 years behind me. And then same thing with her, you gain a totally different perspective working in that policy role. I could hand her a bill, she could read it, she understands what a definition means and how it's cited in code and referencing federal code and referencing state code, but I have a much larger picture of kind of how all of those pieces fit together. So my decision and kind of what the advice that I took from my professor at the time, he was like, if you want to practice law, I always said that I would go into family law. I really want to do like childcare sort of work and divorces and things of that nature. I would have been sitting in a law office. I would have seen maybe a little bit of a courtroom. Like it would have not been really what I wanted to do, where I could have had a much greater impact doing that policy role. So my personal opinion is no, you do not need to go to law school to work in any sort of state body, in any sort of state legislature, or even to go past that and go and lobby. It's a lot about kind of learning it, learning the roles, learning the connections, learning how the pieces fit together.
All right, and we have a question about internships available for students who want to major in mathematics or environmental science. I'll kind of speak from this perspective working in career services. Typically, wherever our students want to intern, we are right there with you in the internship application process. We're available to help you apply. We're available to help you with your resume, prepare for your interviews. We can even help with that initial search. We will sometimes get information from certain companies or groups that are looking for math students or environmental science students. And they'll send that information to us, and we'll get it out to students who we know are interested or who are within those degree programs. We also rely a lot on faculty. They usually have a whole lot of great advice about places where our students can intern. And I'll let, if Barb is still here, I'll let her kind of jump in and maybe share a little bit about some past internships that some of our math and environmental science students have done in the past.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bailey. We certainly, as Bailey mentioned, work with students, whatever their field of interest is. In addition to the faculty and our general knowledge and tracking internships, we also have a whole bevy of alums who are here to help. And we've got a couple of platforms for connecting our students. We have a dedicated platform called Alumni Fire, where alums can directly share internship opportunities with Sweetbriar students and alums. And so, for instance, opportunities with like the MITRE Corporation are available in internships. The College Board has internship opportunities for mathematics majors. That overlaps a lot with the field of data science. So that's certainly a growing opportunity for students to secure internships. We also have some larger platforms that we can work with. Our students can look for internships on Handshake and we'll work with them. And we also we took students to over a dozen job fairs in our region this past year. So even though we're a small school, we've got access to a lot of job fairs here regionally. So we'll actually drive our students to those. And that's a great way to connect with individuals that have opportunities. Environmental science is something that we actually have a lot of connections with here locally, and have even done and are doing environmental science internships here on our campus in conjunction with our faculty around some of our special initiatives and programs. So there's always a way to find an opportunity, and we'll work with you from start to finish to make sure you secure that. And you can also get academic credit for your internship. So that learning experience, that chance to test drive your career, can also turn into academic credit for you as you're working towards your degree. And a lot of people will find an internship will either provide clarity or it might redirect them. As Emily mentioned earlier, spending time in the classroom caused her to realize she wanted to do something different. And that's where we talk about an internship as a great way to test drive your career. So that's a great question, and know that we're here to help you.
I hope that answered your question. If you have any other specific questions to the person who asked that question, you can shoot me an email. My email is within the slide deck. Jessie, if I could ask you to go to the next slide. There's my contact information. It's over on the left. You can reach out to me and we can talk further if that didn't really answer your question too much. And we can kind of talk about some specific pathways. For another question, this one's specifically for Lydia, what is the best advice you would give someone who's thinking about being an engineer?
Yeah, I saw that one. I also saw another one I can answer about standing behind our recruiting table. What would you tell a student to convince them to choose Sweetbriar? That's up with the Oxford program one. But as for engineering, so Sweetbriar's engineering program is very special. It is not a mechanical engineering, it's not civil engineering, it's not electrical engineering, it's everything into one. So it touches on a little bit of everything, which makes your opportunities endless, to be honest. So for example, with my degree, I chose to actually specifically go into mechanical, but I know other girls that are going more into environmental science and doing a lot of stuff with ecosystems. One girl has gone on to Areva and done nuclear power reactors and stuff like that. So I don't know, if you want to do engineering, you want to be a problem solver, you want to learn how things work, you want to do hands-on. That's what an engineer does. We're the ones that are kind of designing everything that you're doing using everyday life. Like a civil engineer designs your Keurig. So you want to learn how that works, go into engineering. I'm not really sure if that's answering your question, but you know. As for a recruiting table, convincing a student to choose Sweetbriar, when I was looking at schools, I was looking at the best engineering schools. I was looking at Virginia Tech. I was looking at University of Florida. I was looking at Auburn and a few other places and seeing and comparing those programs, I wasn't even thinking about a small liberal arts college that offers a hands-on engineering degree. And I'm so thankful that I did pick Sweetbriar because it sets you apart from everyone else. Whereas if you go to a big college, you're just going to be another number. You're just going to be the same as everyone else. Your resume and everything's going to look just like someone else. Whereas Sweetbriar, you stand out. You're unique. You're different than anybody else that's applying for these jobs. And I think Sweetbriar, it made me the person who I want to be. So you shouldn't just be looking for a school that's going to give you the best program to set you up for your career. You should find a school that's going to make you the person that you want to be in the future, like 4, 5, 6 years from now. So Sweetbriar honestly made me more mature, it made me smarter, and it made me fiercer. And I'm really thankful for that. And I think that's the best reason to go to Sweetbriar.
Awesome. And so we are going to wrap up our panel with one question. And if you guys could just give like a 1-sentence, like overarching thing. The question is, what would you tell your 18-year-old self about college and your career path?
I'll hop in. I think I would tell myself that you're not always going to get it right the first time, and that it's okay to try new things.
I'll piggyback off that. I think I'd probably tell myself something very similar. I think I would tell myself that it's okay to not know what you want to do, and that's probably why you're at college, is to figure that out. And that's the great thing about liberal arts, is it lets you figure that out without really a high-stakes environment of having to apply to one specific program and being stuck with that. And it's okay to not know, and that's the fun part of being 18.
I tell myself, don't take yourself too seriously. Opportunities will present themselves, especially at somewhere like Sweetbriar, and you never really know where you're going to end up. I thought I'd go to law school straight out of undergrad, and I ended up taking a year off to work, and I think it was one of the best decisions I made. So just kind of allowing yourself to be open to opportunities.
The last one. I would say obviously enjoy every minute, which I think all of us here did. Enjoy it and savor in all the fun experiences you have with friends and new people, but also keep your head down, work hard, and it will definitely pay off.
Thank you guys so much for attending this panel. If you have any additional questions that we weren't able to get to during this webinar, feel free to reach out to me or Emily or Jessie, and we will make sure that we get you an answer to the question that you might have kind of floating in your brain. I also know how it is to be out of a panel or a webinar and be like, oh man, I wish I would have asked that. Don't worry, we're always open to giving you some answers and making some connections, whatever we can do to help with your college search process or with your career development process. We definitely want to do that. I want to give a huge holla holla to our panelists. They are incredible and fierce women that are honestly just taking over this world. And I'm so glad to be able to say that I'm an alum here with them. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you guys so much, and let us know if you have any further questions.